What is up, all you real estate loving individuals? This is episode number 20 of the Real Estate Take podcast, and I'm your host, Wendell Butler. This is your go-to podcast with tons of information regarding the current real estate market, where we get various real estate professionals' current take of real estate. For today's guest, we have Brandon Schwab. Brandon Schwab has been a serial entrepreneur since the age of 15 and brings over 25 years of operational experience to his role as the founder and CEO of Shepherd Premier Senior Living. Since its founding in 2014, Brandon has dedicated himself to fundamentally improving the senior living industry. Driven by a deeply personal mission to create resident-focused care, Brandon's journey began after witnessing his own grandfather receive subpar care in a traditional senior living facility. Determined to find a better way, Brandon discovered the boutique senior living model in 2014, where small, cozy homes like Sutton Homes in Orlando, Florida, provided an inspiring alternative to large institutional facilities. Brandon is passionate about creating a compassionate and dignified experience for seniors, focusing on high-quality, personalized care rather than profit margins. His boutique senior living model offers a 1-to-5 caregiver-to-resident ratio, far exceeding the national average of 1-to-15-to-20, ensuring attentive and individualized care. This innovative approach, which prioritizes well-being of residents over corporate profit, has positioned Brandon as both a disruptor and visionary in the industry. Today, he leads Shepherd Premier Senior Living with a clear purpose: to raise the standard of care to the greatest generation by transforming senior living from an impersonal business model into a deeply impactful, community-oriented experience. So let's bring on Brandon Schwab in here. Brandon, how you doing today?
Hey, man. Things are good, man. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to have you on here because this is a niche or section of real estate that people might not think about, but it's an absolute necessity moving forward, especially with the quote unquote boomer population, what people call them, getting to the age where they're going to need some like assistance and help in healthcare. And myself, being a certified nurse assistant for a few years before I indulged into real estate, I firsthand experienced just the lack of stability and actual like good care in nursing homes, because there was like instances where I was caring for like 30 plus patients in a day, and it just can't be done physically. It just can't be done. And that's one of the reasons why I actually got burnt out and particularly left the industry, is because I couldn't work in an industry where profit was over care. It just didn't feel right. So I'm excited to dive into this and just get to know you more, and the viewers get to know you more as well. So we're gonna start very simple. We're just gonna ask you like who you are, what got you into real estate, and what like prompted you to kind of go this path, and just give us a summary of like who you are as a person.
Sure. Thank you for all of that. And also thank you for the opportunity. I have been following you just since you were able to do things up front in early 2023. And I am thankful for the opportunity for us here to hop on, right? I got in real estate back in 2010. So 2 years after the 2008 crash. And I actually began like wholesaling for the first 2 years. And then 2 years after that, I began building a portfolio of like rentals from like what I learned there. And then I realized quickly that there is a ton of people doing that. And I got exposed to a home down in Florida that cared for seniors in a home with, it was 5 rooms, 3.5 like baths. So I've never seen that before, right? I always thought senior living was done in these huge facilities, and with our own personal family member, kind of got exposed to how ugly things are. So like one caregiver every 20 to 30 is typical. And as you were able to offer that, like that's a thing that happens every day. And we just saw what that was going to be in these homes and felt what it was like to have your own family member in these places and get care that isn't very good. We just saw what it was like, what it felt like. And I just said, this is terrible. And it's crazy that our country, like that's the top option that's out there, is to go to a huge facility with 100 to 200 plus people and have terrible care. I mean, to follow up on the thing that happened to you is, so one caregiver has to care for 20 to 30 people on average post-COVID. I mean, those figures that I think we had earlier, those were pre-COVID. Today, post-COVID, it's like 1 to 20 to 30. And unfortunately, the owners put you in a position to fail because you can't keep up with 20 to 30 people. And it translates into people like having accidents that you can't keep up with the quantity of people that have to be changed. And it's a huge opportunity that our country really really needs to look at it because there's a huge challenge here. I just read an article that was able to say last week that our country needs 775,000 new units to keep up with the 2030 need. Like, it's coming, and we are not capable of keeping up right now. That's a huge challenge for all of us that are able to hear this today. It's happening.
Yeah, and like it's crazy to think like people see the economy right now and they're like the supply is so down and the supply and demand like isn't there for like normal housing. But this is like, I think it's a bigger concern, or it's up there with that concern as well. The fact that people are getting to an age where they're going to need assistance or some type of in-house living care, and a lot of those individuals maybe not properly saved correctly for like retirement and things like that. So a lot of the people that end up hitting that spot, that age, that didn't have the amount of funds to like really prepare for like that part of their life, they end up getting placed into these huge like nursing home type situations where the care is just subpar. So it's definitely a niche that you could tap into, and I love that you're doing that. And it's been something in the back of my mind that I've been interested in too. I'm like, I've seen it firsthand. I'm like, it is something that needs to be done there.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, how did you originally get into it? Like, did you start small? Did you partner with other people, or like what was kind of your focus in the beginning, and how did you transfer from like normal real estate to this new niche that you're doing? Because I'm sure there's a lot of liabilities that come along with it. Did you have someone helping you, or did you kind of just go with the flow and figure it out yourself?
So I would like to say I figured it out myself, but transparently, I got going and I went as far as I could go till I couldn't go any farther. Then I ended up hiring a local nurse consultant, a person that has been able to do it prior. We hired a girl named Jo, and she helped us kind of get things going. That was the upfront paperwork, policy, kind of all of that. But then I'm good at opening up the house. But what I realized is I had to partner up with a person that was going to operate the homes. And a thing that I found is there was a large population of unhappy folks in healthcare that loved our thesis and they wanted to get back behind. But what I found is doors opened of people that are in healthcare that had that healthcare history that I didn't. So I found that we created it's like win-win opportunity. Our current director of operations has been with us now for 9 years. And that's critical for us to have a person that gets it, but also has the heart of what we're doing. We could easily choose to focus on earning extra funds and cut our current caregivers, so like one caregiver to every 5 to 8 people compared to 20 to 30. We don't have to do that. Like, we intentionally do that because we know that if you offer great care, you have to give the caregivers an opportunity to actually do that. So it actually gets going from the owners down, and we have given up earning extra money. We intentionally focus on people because at the end of the day, I had to answer the question of, if our family member was in here, would I feel comfortable that we're doing everything possible to offer the top care? And at the end of the day, people in the country feel guilty taking their family members to these huge facilities, but they don't know anything else. They don't know that there's any other option out there. So they just kind of go do it, and they aren't happy with it. But once they drop them off, they really don't often go back to there and actually visit them very often. I feel it's very sad. And I feel like if you create an atmosphere that is full of love and family, you actually can have an atmosphere where families want to come to. And that's what we do. I mean, our first house, we got going, it was in a town of 800 people. I mean, it was 10 beds. We bought it, so rehabbed it, put over 500 grand into it. And we converted a 4,800 foot house into a 10 bed place that was actually 7 bedrooms, plowed about $850,000 into it. But a couple years later, when we got it appraised at $1.8 million, which is all right. I think we're onto something, right? So that's kind of how we got going. I tell people we're on version 10.0 right now because we've learned a lot over doing this for 10 years. I feel like every year I would take action, but I would fail. And then you would take action on what you were able to learn from that failure. And then you just got to keep on going. Now that's a painful way to go do it. I think there's other avenues today, but at the time, that's kind of what I chose to do. I didn't have a whole ton of funds and I had to kind of creatively patch it together because I saw a need that had to be filled and I had to creatively figure it out. I did find that getting financing for these type of assets was actually very difficult because people they didn't get like what I was doing. I mean, so I would go ask for financing and they're like, Brandon, are you saying that this house is going to earn $55,000 each month? And so I was like, yes. But what I found is when anyone's going to be confused, they do nothing. And they would tell me, well, Brandon, why don't you come back when you have home 2 open or home 3? They just kept on going down a road. And I just realized that typical bank financing can fund X. And if you're out of X, you're in trouble. go. And you have to be creative. These things are expensive. It's not for the faint of heart, for sure. I mean, it was a grind. I mean, first 3-5 years was extremely tough, difficult. I learned a lot by failure, but I also didn't have anyone kind of coaching me through it. I just kind of fumbled through and failed as fast as I was able to, right? Fail fast, right?
Yeah, you kept failing forward, and that's what you got to do. It's not, I wouldn't say it's failing, you're learning, but you keep moving forward and finding ways to get your goals and your mission complete. Yeah, I was going to touch on that too. Like with the bank financing, like when you first started, I was a lender as well, so I understand how conservative they are, and they stick to like a box. They're like, we just want to do like investment type stuff. We want to do like, this is going to be that. Like, we don't want to deal with any hypotheticals or like things that we don't get into. So I'm sure you had to build like a track record to even show a bank this works. And then now they might be more interested in doing it. And I'm sure they're calling you now to be like, hey, you got another one? You got another one? Because it works. But in the beginning, you got to understand that if I'm a bank and I'm looking to just do lending and make money on my money for my investors and things like that, we want to be as conservative as possible, but make the most money as possible. So if I'm getting a pitched like assisted living type home that's going to be, used to be a residential home, and now it's going to be transferred into a multiple bed, bath property that can then have elderly there that insurance pays for, etc. I just haven't seen that yet as a bank. So I'm not going to say, let's go. I'm going to say, hey, I want to see this work. And then I want to see the numbers and see like a year profit and loss, like what's going on, does it work, etc. Because they just don't understand it, and they won't understand it until you basically prove it to them and have proof in the pudding, I guess is what they say. So,
and two, once you even do all of that, they go, well, 10 beds, man, if 1 or 2 people die, that's like 20% of your income. Once you call me back when you have 20 or 30 beds, they always look for excuses to get out because they don't want to be on the hook for the person that funded a deal that potentially failed. And at the end of the day, if that's the attitude they have, like there's a critical piece that needs funding that isn't getting funding because they aren't open to these ideas. And it's a huge challenge.
Yeah. So with financing, do you have to go towards, it's not residential, it's more commercial type business financing, right? Is that what you aim for if you do talk to banks? Because it's more of a business and you're turning residential properties, possibly residential properties, some are probably commercial already, like 5+ units, but you're turning them into more of a commercial building in a way.
Yeah.
So do they look at it that way, or do they look at it kind of as like a residential?
So when you are looking at a asset, you must use the highest use for each asset to determine what it's worth. So if you have for example, a $500,000 house that is generating $20,000 each month of income after expenses, you can't use a local comp of another $500,000 house to figure out what it's worth. You would use an income-based approach that would take into account the $20,000 each month times 12 is $240,000. They use a cap rate, typically between 8% to determine what it's worth. And then they'll give an LTV of that, loan to value. So if it's worth $2 million, so maybe they'll give 75% LTV, which is $1.5 million, which works if you have $800,000 into it. And then you have like equity in that deal about $700,000. Like that works financially because they're given a loan. What I found though is not a lot of lenders are experienced with it. So they just don't have a track record. So they default to say, yeah, I don't know what that is. They're afraid of if grandma has to be, if the loan isn't funded, they would have to evict a grandma and grandpa. And that's kind of like an awkward point for them, right? So I get it. So lenders out there that look for volume, they want 200 beds, 300 beds plus. But if you have 10 to 20 people per home, I mean, that takes a lot of work to get there. I mean, in fact, we are currently in that phase going, we have a lender that wants to give us cash, but you have to have 15 homes to 30 homes, not onesie twosies. They want to see 15 to 30 homes. They would give us a better cap rate if we have 30 homes, because that's 450 people, where they'll give us a lower cap rate if we have 15 houses, which is like 200 people. So those are things that I didn't really expect when I first got into this, was some of those kind of holdbacks for financing. You have to be creative in order to get these deals done. Our first deals, I had the owner carry back financing. Highest I paid in interest was 1.5% interest. There's a lot of folks that own properties free and clear that they would love to get their full asking price. In exchange, you would get terms that you can deal with. And I was really good at that. And that's one of the only reasons where I'm at today is we knew how to creatively go purchase, but did not involve going to the bank to get financing done. There was other options actions that had to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure when you talk to like sellers too and tell them what your goal is, I'm sure they would love to be a part of it in some scenarios, I feel like, right? Do they sometimes, like when you tell them what you're trying to do, are they like, wow, like I'll definitely help out. As long as I get my asking price, like I'll give you terms that are more favorable, especially that you've done it multiple times now. I would hope at least. I mean, if I was a seller, I'd be like, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, and I think it's nice is you can go after properties that maybe aren't as popular properties. I mean, they could have higher tax bills of $2,000 to $3,000 per month. There's not a lot of people trying to buy them today, right? No one wants to buy a tax bill of $2,000 to $3,000 per month for life. But for us, we can handle that based on what we do in this industry. And we ideally look for homes that are 5,000 to 10,000 feet on the first floor only, which is harder to find. And part of some of our failures that we've had is we kind of got a little more creative and went out of the typical property that I buy. And one time I bought a 3-floor home and I put in a $200,000 like elevator. In theory, it was great until you had a power surge and you didn't put a surge protector on the elevator, which seems really crazy. Didn't think to ask that question, but I didn't even think that'd be a thing, right? Smoked a circuit panel that was $3,500 each. That was going to take 30 to 60 days to get in. And I said, that doesn't work. We've got people in the house. So what I realized is you have to buy carefully and don't get too desperate for properties, because then you end up in deals that are not always your best deals. And that's kind of what I found here.
Yeah, because if you're thinking about more senior living, you want it to be a 1-floor building because you don't want any stairs really involved. You don't want to deal with, like having the senior individuals have to go up and down stairs. It just adds an extra risk to that property and also risks to the seniors as well, because they could fall, they could get stuck, they could, like you said, the elevator could fail. And then you have to basically bring a team in to help bring people down, because it takes a lot of manpower to move some of these individuals that might not be able to walk themselves. But that's super cool. So financing obviously is tough, because when you get creative with these deals and you try to start a movement that's new, it's always a little bit more complicated with showing like the banks trying to get financing. Just to dive even more, we might be getting a little bit too detailed, but I love this stuff. So when you purchase a property that wasn't originally for that, like, do you have to talk to the city and the town about zoning and regulations, and are they on board with it? Or did you have to really pitch it to them, go to multiple board meetings, really get them on board? And then are they on board? Will they easily persuade on board? And do they actually give like grants and like tax benefits and things? Because I feel like they should.
Yeah, they should, but they definitely don't. You do have to go through a process to get permitted. That's extremely difficult. You have to do a conditional use permit, and people that don't know you yet will tend to fight it. Like, they don't understand it. And like, one person thinks it's going to be X and they go and talk to their neighbors. And so all of us have had times where it's easy, but we've had times where you definitely have to work for it. I mean, anyone tells you that it's easy, they're not telling you the truth. We have found it to be difficult. A tip that I've always found very helpful is I've always hired a good attorney that's friends with the village attorneys. You typically pay a little bit extra for that, but I feel like it helps get things through. So like less headache. Not to say that people can't come in and fight and cause challenges. I mean, I could tell you horror stories of things that I didn't think even existed that we had to go through. So it is definitely not as easy. There is value of working with an operator that's kind of been there, done that. Either if you would invest in one, or if you are doing it yourself, I would definitely give yourself 3 to 6 months, and I'd probably budget at least $20,000 for your attorney to go get that through. And it could take time. I mean, our longest one took us 2 years. So they definitely take time, and you cannot operate without that. If you go fix up a house and just put in seniors, someone tips you off, they come and close you down. So you have to do things properly. There's a process and it takes time. I typically found from the time that I bought a property to the time it was open and fully cash flowing is anywhere from a year to 2 years, like an average of probably 18 months. And that's a long time to be kind of cutting checks and doing holding costs for sure.
Yeah, you got to be conservative and prepare for that. Because what people don't understand is real estate. See online people buying properties and doing these creative things all the time, and they think like, oh, I could just go do that. But what they don't talk about on social media and stuff is what's really going on in the background, because they don't want to talk about the bad things. They just want to talk about the good things to get you to like more views and stuff. But real estate is it's such a people to people business. And that includes the city, state workers. It includes dealing with the best attorneys. It includes dealing with the individuals that run the property, the neighbors. Like once you start trying to change what you're doing in a neighborhood, every neighbor gets a mailer saying like what you're trying to do. And then they can go to the city or the town and be like, I don't want this. Or they say, that's fine. And you have to fight all that. So you're like an uphill battle to change something. And it all depends on the people because like everybody has different opinions about stuff, right? So like you might have a neighbor that's like, oh, someone's trying to do like a nursing home here. Like they're just trying to profit off of elderly. What an evil person. Like that's probably might be what's going through their mind, but they don't understand what you're trying to do is actually help that industry because you're doing better than most nursing homes are doing with the care that you're providing. And they just don't understand that, but you have to explain that to them. And I'm sure you've had to actually go represent yourself or have someone there representing to explain really what's going on to help change people's mind. Because neighbors and neighborhoods can basically shut you down if they want to. If they come together and say, we don't want that.
Right. Well, they can certainly make it harder for sure. I would argue that they wouldn't be able to keep you from doing it. There is a federal Fair Housing Act which allows you to do this, and you cannot discriminate against any one party of people, whether they are pink, purple, old, or young. You cannot do that. And a village hall or a city is a government body that can't do it either. They can't say, I don't want kids here or old folks here or pink people here. You can't do that. You could ask to put certain conditions on, yes, but you cannot overturn a federal Fair Housing Act. But local neighbors can certainly make it more difficult, 100%. Like they could make your life very, very difficult.
Yeah, and so can the state workers. I mean, like you said, they can just add conditions and stuff to it. And some of the conditions that you've got, I'm sure you were like, what? And they're just adding red tape, to try to get you not to do it. But again, like you explained in your story, as long as you just keep moving forward and just don't stop and be resilient and you really want this outcome, your goal to happen, like eventually it gives. And I'm sure you've dealt with that too, like some of the conditions. Do you have any conditions that pop in your mind that you're like, what the heck, but you just did it anyway just to get it over the finish line?
I mean, I have a few that I can tell you. One on our latest one that took us 2 years to get this permit, there was a lady behind us that held an underground fen that was like named after her dad. Do you know what a fen is?
I haven't heard of it, no.
So I didn't either. So I was like, what's a fen? Apparently a fen is if you dig down 10 inches into the earth, you find not only it's like water, but you find a like aqua pathway that is moving, a current of water. This lady her attorney wanted an EcoCat, which is a federal couple-page document to determine the impact of our use on an endangered turtle and a bumblebee. Now, granted, this house has been here for 30 years, and all I'm doing is fixing the inside. And she delayed permits at least 1 year because of this EcoCat. And what I realized is I have never heard of that one before. I thought we'd be fine, but when I saw it firsthand, I was like, holy cow, like that's incredible. It took us 2 years to get permit. And then it's 2 years of holding costs. So I've got a couple $100,000 into this project of just holding costs that we aren't going to ever be able to get back. Really, like it's just part of opening up, and it's unfortunate, but that's kind of what it takes sometimes.
Yeah, and that's like, is that just part of like, I want to say, is like an environmental study portion of it, or just an environmental permit that you had to get? Because we hear horror stories about those all the time, especially with developers dealing with environmentals. That's one of the biggest things that cause, extended timelines in your projects. Is that what it kind of fell under? Was like an environmental type study or environmental permit? And would it have not come up if the neighbor or the person behind like mentioned it, they just caused it to come up?
Right. Yeah. So we have done all of our other houses and that hasn't ever come up. This particular thing came up and it was only on this day or this particular property because they were trying to keep us out. And I think they probably realized that they couldn't keep us out legally, but they knew that they could like postpone it as long as they could. And that's a tactic as well as, can you handle 2 years of holding costs? And that like really hurt them. The thing that was really interesting is the lady that was doing it's like 80 years old. sold. Like before you know it, you're going to need our help. And so it might just be full. We not have any room, even if we do, right? Like point being is like people think that I think they're afraid of something that they don't know really what it actually is. In their heads, they kind of come up with their own thoughts of what it could be. And oftentimes it isn't anywhere close to the truth. I mean, here, this particular house was 15,000 feet. Who else could want to purchase a 15,000 foot house? Maybe a big family with teenage kids.
Yeah.
What do teenage kids do on Saturdays and on weekends?
Yeah, probably they have fun.
Would you rather have that, or would you rather have a group of seniors that are typically going down to sleep by 8:30 or 9?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but I feel like there's folks today, they will complain on anything. So
It's kind of like I talk about it a few times on here. It's sort of like a victim mindset a lot of people have where if they can find a way to complain and get involved in things and create a story that they're involved and need to get fixed to something that's happening or stop a change that's occurring because they just don't understand it. They try to do it, it's just, again, it's part of the people to people business in real estate because real estate is all just people to people and you deal with this all the time and people forget about that. It's not about buying properties, doing whatever creative structure you want or type of business you want and then selling them. It's dealing with people, like especially in real estate for sure, because like you're dealing with living like structures, which only used by people. You know? But that's super interesting. And it's cool that you told that story because it's so cool to see like different aspects of all real estate and how different areas have different like bumps and barriers that you have to push through. Now, I just want to kind of get an idea of, and you can make this as short as possible, as detailed as possible, up to you. But I want to get like an idea of when you first started, maybe your first property doing this, or your second or third, like once you kind of understood how it was going. Could you just tell like how the whole process goes and a story around like just that prop and maybe some lessons you learned from it?
So I've always learned that whatever you think a fix and flip is going to cost or a like rehab is going to cost, typically double it and then take that number for like working capital because you're typically going to need $250,000 to $500,000 just for holding cost, right? For a typical property. When I first got going, I didn't really think that that was a thing. So I thought it was just easy peasy. But as you really learn and look at the things, like things take longer, things come up. So we've learned to like estimate it and then double it and then double that again for like working capital. And we found that that's really critical. I mean, I've done well on houses that have 2 floors and I've also done terrible on houses that have 2 floors. So I've learned to really not do 2 floors. The one that does well, it's 7,300 foot house. So it's good because it's got 15 people in it. Like it works, but it's still not super easy. I found traditional advertising doesn't really work for this business. So we create partnerships with 5 types of people and we partner up with healthcare professionals, doctors, like nurses, things like that. We partner with discharge planners, church pastors, financial planners, and then our final one, which is probably our best secret, is we work with people cutting hair. We intentionally work with hair cutters because they know really who's going through what thing with their parents, and they think of us, and we invite them in to cut hair in our house so they get to be exposed to our business, and then they go tell everyone anyways. Like we filled some houses like that, and yeah, I mean, there's plenty of learning curves. I mean, I've done traditional advertising and got nothing and wasted 50 grand on advertising, and you like think it can work, but it just doesn't. I mean, this is such a people business. So yeah, it was such a learning curve of really from everything of hiring to staffing to food costs. I mean, at first we were doing food costs and we were throwing away thousands of food each month because people didn't eat. So like you and I eat like we eat, but our typical resident was 80 to 85 years old. And they're like, I can't eat anymore, Brandon. And we would literally throw away thousands and thousands of dollars of food every month. And it took us time to kind of figure those things out. What type of portions is good? How to handle overtime. So like how to handle when people call off. I mean, COVID was brutal. I'm glad we got through that, but man, thank goodness for our team members, our investors, our partners. If it wasn't for them, we would not have got through COVID. So COVID was a test. So like now we're at a point a couple years past COVID now, and we're kind of digging out of that trench. I mean, at the end of the day, we've learned a lot. Scale is critical. Efficiency is critical. And doing one house is never going to accomplish all of those. Like you have each person wearing 5 different hats, and it's not a great way to kind of operate things. You burn people out. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, like talking about like your staff and stuff too. Do they, like if I was working in a senior living facility and I only had 5 to 8, like 5 patients myself, I feel like like that makes it so, one, they're not burnt out as much. Two, they give so much better care because they're just more positive and happy because they have the support of the chain of command, obviously helping them out. Do you find that when you hire on new staff, is that kind of the feedback you get compared to like when they were coming from, if they were coming from like a larger nursing home or like a hospital type setting? Like, do they like it a lot? Like, what are their feedback on it?
So staffing in this industry is one of the biggest challenges. Let's be totally honest. Staffing's challenging. Our industry, if you have a choice to go to a home like ours or a facility like you were at, we actually call that, we don't use the word facility to describe our homes. We actually call that the like F word, right? The F word describes the other places, right? Our homes are very different. But like if you have a choice of one caregiver to 20 to 30 or 5 to 8, it allows you to have more of a family type atmosphere where you get to know people better and on more of a personal level because you have time, where it's wildly different. Where the other places grind them. I mean, if you would take care of 20 to 30 people, I mean, can you really give great quality care if you're trying to just keep up and just keep people changed? That by itself is extremely difficult. And if you have to do it for 20 to 30 people and at any given time, 5 to 10 of them have to be changed, you're trying to keep up so they are clean and dry, but you also need to do it in a very caring way, which is hard when you got to do 5 to 10 people and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're trying to keep up. And let's face it, I mean, that's where caregivers lose it. They can't keep up. They feel overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. And that's where you get elder issues, like where people get hit or things like that. The caregivers are put in a place to fail and they get a bad name for that because they one that loses it, but it's really the owner's fault. The owner that puts them in a position to try to care for 20 to 30 is insane. And the caregivers on the front line of it, and it's insane. So as our country grows and we look at the facts, like people are going to hear these calls and different podcasts and they're going to learn that there's other options out there. And they're going to say, well, I would always choose a home over a facility if I know that there's a home option. That's why I do calls like this, is I want people to be aware of kind of what's going on.
Yeah, because it's like a hidden niche because people think that it's only nursing homes and like the new construction, large assistant living type places they can get into. It's not. Little do you know that you have this going on. I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. And it's just all about finding it and being able to utilize it for your family. I want to dive into just a little bit more about the homes that you rehab, and then we can start trying to wrap this up because I know you're a busy guy. But I just want to get an understanding, and for the viewers too, like when you look at a property, obviously you liked it to be one floor, very large square footage. Do you go in and then you basically rehab it to have just multiple rooms? So it's kind of like a layout of a nursing home where you have like the rooms side by side, or do you give them like totally separate units? Like, what is your structure of how you create these homes to give like the best living area for these elderly that are kind of at the end of life?
We ideally want to give people their own like rooms, and sometimes we give them a double room if they choose to. And it's really up to them what they want. If you choose 2 people per room, there is a discount. You tend to save $1,000 per month. You could do that. Some people are not worried about price and they want to have their own room. So we do that. We look at rooms differently. Like a typical room is about 12 by 12. We want them there in the evening time, and then in the AM, we want them to get on their clothes, and we want them to interact with people, and we want them to have engagement daily, right? Like that's how humans are built. They're not meant to be tucked up in a room and not talk with anybody. They just aren't meant to do that. We want to create atmospheres that are just like that. We custom build tables so everyone eats together at one table. When you were a kid, did you eat at a table of 4, 4, 4, 4 in your house? No, of course not. And what happens is when you do that, it becomes extremely cliquey that those people only talk to those people. And then like it just creates other problems. We custom build tables so everyone can fit in one table together. And let's be honest, sometimes they fight. Sometimes they get a little feisty, right?
Yep.
And that's okay because you actually want them to be firing when they're having conversations. That's good. The beautiful part about dementia is in 15 to 20 minutes, they usually forgot that they even had any of that, which is a terrible thing to have, but there are some parts of it that I feel that is good.
Yeah, speaking of dementia, it's a terrible thing that happens to people, but yeah, when they get pretty aggressive or like mad or something, they usually, as long as you can talk to them, kind of show them a different thing to do, they forget about it pretty quickly, which is good. But it's important to have, one, like you said, proper staff in place to understand how to do that. And the fact that you have staff there that is 1 to 5 patients allows them to be able to do that. Like when I was working at a nursing home, I had like 20 to 30 people. My whole goal for that day was to make sure everybody was changed, like you said, because that's all I could really do is make sure people were changed, make sure they were adjusted so they didn't get bed sores, and that's it. And then hopefully try to get them to eat. If I had to feed some of them, try to feed them as much as I can. And it's almost like you're speed rushing like through care, which you shouldn't ever do. So I love that. I love that setup, and I love that you focus on getting them to communicate with each other and have like common areas to like hang out and stuff, because that's huge. So we'll go into wrapping this up a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about, as you're going along in this business and these goals, is there anything that like changed in your mindset of the business and networking and just your mission as you came along? And what was that?
When I first got into it, I saw a challenge in our country that had to be fixed. And that was always our top priority. During COVID, it was a really difficult time that really tested were we really committed to that. Because during COVID, I mean, we could have easily quit. A lot of people did. And unfortunately with that, like, it was a challenging time, but it also weeded people out that really didn't have the proper heart. Yeah. And it kept those folks that really weren't authentically in it for the right reasons. And that part was kind of good. I mean, our passion has always been here for this. I mean, during COVID, we operated without earning any money. Yep. We just poured dollars into it, and not everyone could have done that. And we are committed to what we're doing, and the purpose is clearly there. But like, if anyone gets in this business, if they invest in it or if they get into it, I mean, you have to have the heart behind it first. The dollars will always come, but once you actually have the proper heart to it, because at the end of the day, you are caring for people's parents, and that's a huge responsibility that you need to take. You have to put that effort towards that, because that's a huge deal. So I find those that get in just chasing dollars, they typically fail, and we either purchase buildings from them because they failed because they didn't have the right heart back behind it, right?
Yeah, and that pretty much goes for any business. If you're just chasing dollars, you're not going to grow as much as you want, because you're not going to be able to take or put in the amount of effort and the amount of grunt work and the amount of grind that you need to get to that next step if you just think about dollars. Because if you think about dollars, when COVID came, I'm sure dollars was your only goal, then a lot of people, must have got out of that industry pretty quick. So that's awesome. And that's awesome to hear that you guys pushed forward and even put money into it when you weren't making money. Like, that's just shows how much you guys believe in it and how much you guys care about it as well. But we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I have 2 back-to-back questions, which you can answer with both at once. But one is, where would you tell people to go to get more education on this, and maybe some books to read or something if they were interested in it more? And then follow up on that, if there's anything else you just want to tell the audience, like how to reach out to you, how to maybe come on some webinars or anything if they're interested in investing, because I know you raise capital for these things, and any like charity events, business links, whatever you want to put in as a plug, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So if you want to get into the business and do what we're doing, there's an online group called RAL, the Room. It's a group of doctors that kind of got that going. That's probably the best way that I would tell people to get in. They're a bunch of awesome guys that they're doing it. I think that that's probably the best place to go to get information and really kind of determine if it's for you or not. If you're looking for a good book, Life in Air is probably my favorite book as far as prioritizing your life and work. I feel like people can work too much and they pass up great things in their personal life that doesn't get done. And at the end of the day, I feel it's a huge miss, right? I think having a good balance of personal and work is great. That's an awesome book. It is Lifeonaire, Life in Air. Author is Steve Cook. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I mean, if you found any value here, I wanted to add as much value as I could. You can always go to my first name, so last name.com, and book a time to actually talk with me, and we can talk for 30 minutes and answer any questions. If you're looking to invest, that's probably the best thing to do. And I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find there. Probably the best channel for kind of talking business is on LinkedIn. And either follow us on our page on the internet, check out our houses, and kind of give us some feedback. I mean, would love to help others. We are raising capital capital. We do have a fund that's open for certain investors that are going to qualify, and we are raising capital to change the future of the industry. We can do our part, but without capital, I can't do it all. So we are raising capital. We've got some great tax perks for investing because we have cash flow, as well as through a cost seg, we can do a depreciation, which could get almost dollar for dollar back of what folks are investing. You have to talk to your tax expert, of course, but we're finding, particularly who's coming into office next, we kind of know what's going to kind of happen. This is a great time to be doing what we're doing. So even if you aren't looking to do it actively, if you want to invest passively, call us, talk to us. I feel that there's an opportunity that you could be part of an industry while helping folks that need it. And as you kind of described earlier, there is another option other than what you've gone through. And as we grow and have, our goal is to have 30 homes within a year or so. We have homes under contract. We just said need cap. Our end goal is to have over 300 homes. So our vision's big, is to like roll these homes up and help have more of a common experience for the general public to know that these options are out there. I feel most people in the country are not aware that these options exist, and there's thousands throughout the country. I'm trying to open up eyeballs to folks in this industry, and we want to be the company that takes it coast to coast. We are looking for investors, family offices, folks looking to invest, but also once we get going in the future, we're looking for RNs, folks that actually want to operate some houses under our name. So there's opportunities for both that. And then if anyone ever hears of any portfolios of homes that are 10 to 20 people per home, we are looking for those. So think of us, find me on LinkedIn, and we'll talk soon. Looking forward to it.
I love it. Such a good goal, and it's such a good mission. I fully support, just from talking to you today and from looking into all the information you sent me. Like, it's an industry that the healthcare industry is something that needs change, and it needs creative opportunities to help the healthcare industry, especially in the elderly sector of it. So I love what you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on here and explaining what you do a little bit more detailed. And I'm going to have all his information in the bio of this podcast. So if anybody wants to reach out to Brandon, we'll have all the information there. And yeah, I'm excited to keep in touch with you and see the amazing things that you do, because I'm sure you're just going to keep on going. And soon enough, you're going to be like, wow, I have like 5,000, 10,000 homes in the front runner of the industry.
So, I mean, that's what we are looking to do. And I feel it's out there. I feel there's an opportunity to kind of pool these houses in one giant company and change how folks think of it. So we are the future of the industry, kind of how Uber changed the whole taxi industry, right? That they could have come up with their own app, right? But they didn't, and they just left the door open for Uber to kind of come on in. So,
yep.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity for us to hop on here today. Keep on doing your thing. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be on your number 20, right? So,
yep, number 20, the big 2-0.
2-0, let's go.
2-0, let's go. Well, thank you guys for listening, and yeah, thank you so much.
All right, perfect, man. Thank you very much.